The etheric plane is really part of the physical world. It is tied to the physical globe because in reality it is the mold into which the dense body is cast. Just as the physical anatomy of man is really molded into the etheric double. The etheric body is purely a physical substance, but far more attenuated than the solids, liquids, and gases which we see. It is more or less tied to the physical body, sometimes disintegrating with it, but usually remaining differentiated from the substance of the astral world. The etheric body hovers over or near the grave where the body has been placed, and sometimes leads to an earthbound condition. To prevent this possibility, the ancient occultists cremated the physical body. Now we're getting to where that cremation came from. When this is done, nothing remains to tie the higher intelligence to matter, the body having been entirely reduced to basic inorganic substance. The first dawning of etheric vision, which is really nothing more than an extension of physical sight and not clairvoyance, as some imagine. Which reminds me, Framestar, I know we talked about the cyclomancy telescopic vision. My cousin shared a pretty interesting way that he goes into it. He visualizes the thing that he's trying to see in a distance, and his eye is being like extremely large right up on that object. And as he focuses on that visualization of like a giant eye looking directly at the thing he's trying to see, he says that helps to facilitate his subconscious vision. Something neat to try there if you're working on your remote vision. But back to this, the first dawning of etheric vision, which is really nothing more than an extension of physical sight and not clairvoyance, as some imagine, brings man into the world of specters, the borderland between the physical and true superphysical worlds. Here, he sees these forms in flowing draperies formed out of the fine atoms of this world, seething and twisting, Dantesque fashion, in endless clouds. Millions of them stretch as far as the eye can reach, floating in groups or wavy lines in the sea of ether in which they are preserved. In the endless march of time, they are slowly reduced, however, the atoms returning to the etheric world in the same manner that physical atoms finally return to dust. And as the physical atoms are incorporated again into ever-changing bodies, and as that which was once in the body of man may next appear in the organism of plant or animal, so the ether which was once attracted by the centers of etheric consciousness to build a body, when dispelled by time, finally gathers itself into new forms. Let me read that again because I highlighted it. And as the physical atoms are incorporated again into ever-changing bodies, and as that which was once in the body of man may next appear in the organisms of plant or animal, so the ether, which once was attracted by the centers of etheric consciousness to build a body, when they're dispelled by time, they finally gather themselves into new forms. So when your chakras stop spinning, that's when your etheric body starts to dissolve and go join something else. Matter's not created or destroyed. Neither is ether. Black Wraith says, question, is that book connected to Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, or is it a different subject on its own? I mean, I would say that all of his teachings are connected together. This book in particular is a lecture. I don't know the timeline of him writing his texts, but yeah, I guess I'd say yes. Alora, peace and greetings. Thank you so much. Alora says, ooh, like in the vampire lore, you have to cremate vampires or stab them so they turn to ash. Yeah, so they no longer have that anchor. Framestar says, absolutely, to think of it like a camera lens, which I'm well versed in. So it really helps with visualization and the mechanics of the process in terms of aperture and magnification. Okay. Nice, nice. I love how you can take what you know and what you're already well versed in, and then take that symbology and those metaphors into your practice. And what that has a side effect of doing is it makes your mundane work spiritual. It's like you're blending the two. Reminds me of my meditation today on Shakti. They keep repeating and echoing to me, focus on me, that third eye. So when I meditate on these deities and I focus on that third eye or that Bindu point, I see myself going into that third eye and filling up their body with my substance. Right? I see the image of that deity, but myself in it. And then on the other side, I see that deity entering me, filling me with their substance. So it's like that yin yang effect. They say, focus on me. And I see that third eye point as something that I go into and become them, and they come out of and become me. I completely forgot why I said that. The particles of man's own etheric body are made from the disintegrating atoms of the millions of ghosts that have been floating in the ethers since eternity began. To this sea of ether, the physical body will be returned when its labor is completed, and the records which man has implanted in it, and which are necessary for his soul growth, have been extracted therefrom and incorporated into his higher vehicles. Keep in mind what Dion Fortune was talking about in the Cosmic Doctrine. That book is so integral. That book is necessary reading to be in her group. Wild, right? It's like a key, it's like a master key. I suggest reading the Cosmic Doctrine again if you have a physical copy. It's a master key because when you go back and look at everything that you've studied thus far, things will take on a whole new meaning. Whole new meaning. And patterns are so important and so integral to this whole thing. When you look at what she mentioned in her book, The Cosmic Doctrine, about how when something is set in motion, it continues in motion forever. Now, you actually observing it and seeing it, that might change, but the force behind it going into motion goes on forever. That explains why life is, we can interpret and see life based on the habit patterns. All creatures that live exhibit habit patterns. That's how we know what kind of life it is. Even microscopic entities with no brain, the things that live in water and live in your blood and on your eyelashes, they exhibit pattern. Like, life is pattern, is it not? And that's why they're children and they're progeny, and when they reproduce and create more of themselves, when they replicate, they perform the same patterns, don't they? All dogs do dog stuff, all cats do cat stuff, all men do men stuff, and all women do women stuff, and all black men do black men stuff, and white men do white men stuff, and it gets intricate. That's where we get these stereotypes. She used the word stereotype because when these things perform their patterns enough, it gets imprinted into the ether, and when life force trickles down from the center and enters those pathways of pattern, they take on the qualities of the pattern. You got to read the Cosmic Doctrine. It just makes everything else make sense. Hope you're paying attention when we were doing that book read. So, man has a body in each of the worlds of nature, which he has now connected up in his fourfold consciousness. The whole gamut of his expression, as manifest through form, growth, motion, and thought, are inspired by a complete organism, which in man is called a body, and in the grand man, a plane of nature. When you think of the grand man that he just mentioned there, you can think of that great entity that Dion Fortune talked about, the dreamer. the complete organism, Adam Kadmon. So the whole gamut of this expression, which in man is called a body, and in the grand man, a plane of nature. So on the objective plane, it's an objective thing. It's a body. But on the subjective plane, in the spiritual plane, it's a place. It's a place. All right. Each one of these bodies functions on its own respective plane. Man is born into each one of these planes. Oh, wow. Pause. Hold on. So when it comes to that fine line that separates objective and subjective reality, in other words, the five sense world from the spirit world, when it comes to that line, on one side of the line, on the objective side, things are experienced with the five senses as external. But on the subjective side, things are experienced as a place and a plane. So think about this here. Here you have your physical body, and you're experiencing this physical body as an objective physical body, right? But on the spiritual plane, your physical body is a place. Your physical body is a place in the subjective plane. So the spirits that you're working with, let's say that you're working with a spirit for health and healing. On the objective, that spirit for health and healing might look like some type of crystal or some type of sigil or some type of thing. And you do your ritual, you burn your incense, you do this, that, and a third. But on the subjective plane, on the spiritual plane, that spirit is invoked as an essence within the place of your body. So it's doing its thing in your body. Think about work that you do on the astral or the mental or the etheric. In the objective, it's a physical thing, but on the subjective, your mind is a place. Your emotions are a place. Connect that with what I said about the elementals. You know that they exist based on the habit patterns, based on the state that you enter, because the state is a place. That might be something else. I don't know. I hope you got it. Each one of these bodies functions on its own respective plane. Man is born into each one of these planes as the sutramatic atom descends, and by the law of attraction, assembles a body under that plane. This body grows in a natural and progressive manner. Then, as he slowly slows off his vehicles in the decarnate state, until finally only the monadic atom remains upon the arupa plane, he discards each of these bodies. That sounds like it takes quite some time. MC Maestro says some schools see the chakras as realms, same as middle pillar ritual. Would be wise to follow that train of thought, or at least experiment with it, right? Sheesh. Rainwater. Peace, peace. Let's keep going. Check this out. I had this highlighted. These discarded bodies thereupon become ghosts. Okay, so we talked about how as man evolves through his death state, his dying state, or liberation state, whatever you want to call it, as he slowly slows off his vehicles in the decarnate state until finally only the monadic atom returns. Only the true soul, only that true point of consciousness, only that Atman, right? Only that tiny spark of light, that consciousness, until only that remains. Upon the arupa plane, he discards each of these bodies. These discarded bodies, once you really truly liberate the self, right? So think about death and you die. Instead of coming back because you never tried the chocolate payday bar, instead of coming back because you wanted to play Final Fantasy 18, instead of coming back because you never had a fivesome, let's say that you continue to move forward in your death evolution and you release your etheric body and you release your astral body and you release your mental body. Let's say that you continue to evolve. And by the way, another segue for those of you who, number one, read the cosmic doctrine and understood it to some degree. And number two, those of you who continue to do taught with Shuti, I want you to compare how Dion Fortune talks about these atoms going out from the center of existence all the way to the edge of existence, hitting the firmament and coming back around, and thus carving out a path in existence. Think about that. And think about the meditation of Tao Shuti. From Prithvi on up to Akash, all the way up to Shiva itself, and then all the way back down. Compare those two. Meditate on that. Damn, what was I saying before that? Somebody remind me. Though as he slowly saws off his vehicles in the decarnate state until finally only the monadic atom remains upon the Arupa plane, he discards each of these bodies. Okay, thank you, MC Maestro. The Payday, the Final Fantasy, and the Five become the Payday, Final Fantasy, and Five Some Buddha, right? So instead of coming back to do that, right, let's say that you release all that stuff. You let go, you ascend to this plane, you let go, you leave behind your astral body, you leave behind your mental body, you leave them behind. What Manly P. Hall said before was they take time to start to disintegrate on their own. And hell, if you've released them, not your monkeys, not your circus anymore, right? You've got what you need out your physical body, your etheric body, etc. So let's say you go all the way and you leave the matrix completely. Leave it, right? You release all ties and connections, non-attachment. You let it all go. Let it all go. It's kind of like when you used to go to church and you put your tithes in the collection plate. Some people stop tithing because, oh, well, the pastor's doing this, that, and third with the money, not understanding the philosophy. And others gave, and once they put that money in that plate, you don't give a damn where it goes. You already did your energetic exchange once you place the money in that plate. I don't care if the pastor's putting it towards a new Ferrari. That's not my business. All right, so let's say that you reach that point where you completely release and let go of everything, and you liberate yourself from the matrix. You're gone. You become one with God again, and it's a whole different story. Meanwhile, within Prakriti, the astral body is now floating here with no owner. The etheric body is now floating here with no owner. The physical body is sitting in the earth, dissolving. It's got a couple of worms and bugs and whatnot, but these bodies are now floating here, disintegrating like the physical body. All right, let's continue. These discarded bodies thereupon become ghosts or shells in the super-physical world, just as the physical body, when the spiritual ego has departed, becomes a lifeless thing, preserving the shape of the living creature, but without consciousness or intelligence. So, the physical body in the grave is still there, it's deteriorating. It's keeping the form for as long as it can, but those biological processes are happening. There's no intelligence in that body anymore. There's no consciousness in that body anymore. The same thing is happening to the etheric body. It's keeping the form and the shape of you. Same thing with the astral body. It's keeping the patterns of you. It's keeping the states of you. It's keeping the forms of you. You see where we're going now? But there's no consciousness there. There's no intelligence there. You getting this? If you can think ahead, you can connect how this has to do with imposter spirits. It becomes a lifeless thing, preserving the shape of the living creature, but without consciousness or intelligence. This process had for its ancient symbol the moon, which is, in truth, a ghost, its intelligence having incarnated into the earth. This man called the moon a ghost. Okay. Ashley B, peace and greetings. Ashley B says, reminds me of an echo, right? Patterns, once it's set into motion, it doesn't stop, right? Even after you have liberated yourself from out of the matrix, all the patterns that you set in place continue. Think about karma now. Think about sin now. Think about the elementals that you create, your good luck and your bad luck, etc., etc. We thinking about this on a higher level here, right? Good stuff. An echo. An echo. This process had for its ancient symbol the moon. And when you look at tarot, a lot of people define the moon card as deception, right? As deception, as illusion. Well, this is why. Sheesh. The process had for its ancient symbol the moon, which is, in truth, a ghost, its intelligence having incarnated into the earth. It is a dead, lifeless shell, but impelled by the power of a great disintegrator in nature, which is the lord of the ghost or specter. In other words, the regent of the moon. The regent of the moon is the lord of the ghost. Again, there is the earthbound spiritual consciousness, which sometimes visits the living, but in this case, usually through the lower astral body. Consequently, it is never. Ooh, gosh. So think about people who, like those movies where, like, a woman and her lover who died, how she's still connected with the lover, and like he might visit her, or she might see him, or you know what I'm saying? We're looking at the story of a shade, of a habit pattern, and the connection to that habit, even if it's without the consciousness, even if it's without. Oh man. That's a good one. Maestro says, I see how this could have influenced the Pleiadian theory that the moon is a hollow reptile base. Yeah. And see, the problem we find with most of these people is that they take this metaphysical stuff literally, right? And we see that with Christianity. A lot of people take some of the metaphorical stuff literally. Perhaps the moon is hollow, but not literally. Maybe it's hollow because it doesn't have intelligence or consciousness. It is a lifeless body that is capable of being possessed by an intelligence that has the capacity to do so. I can see it now. I'm about to possess the moon. I said you gotta have the capacity to do so. Hot dog down a hallway. All right. Again, there is the earthbound spiritual consciousness, which sometimes visit the living, but in this case, usually through the lower astral body. Consequently, it is never seen, save when the individual is partly asleep. People who have seen these specters always affirm, by all they hold dear, that they were wide awake. The consciousness is wide awake, but functioning at the moment in the lower astral body. Reminds me of a movie I saw recently, but I can't remember what. The consciousness is wide awake, but functioning at the moment in the lower astral body. Hence, the physical body does not move during a vision. People are incapable of standing up and approaching the specter. They think and are alive and awake, but always in a dream-like state in which they are partly under the dominion of sleep. At this time, the physical what was that? Was it a dream or a memory? At this time, the physical body is in repose, and the lower astral qualities do not intersect or express themselves. Then many people become slightly clairvoyant and see the ghosts and specters of this world. The specter usually takes a form outlined in gray, hooded in a dun-colored or gray garment, and surrounded by a bluish-gray light. Cheetah Kasha. We know by now that when we see bluish-gray light, we're usually talking about a vision within the Cheetah Kasha. Shout out to Dharana Darshan, those who know. The specter usually takes form outlined in gray, hooded in a dun-colored or gray garment, and surrounded by a bluish-gray light. After the decarnate person has been absent from the physical plane for some years, the lower part of the body becomes merely a hanging drapery and finally vanishes altogether, because the higher astral plane preserves only the consciousness of the face. These specters usually appear because of some strong earthly ties, such as jealousy and wrongdoing. Great love or great hate also draws them. By his avarice, therefore, the miser is recalled to his treasures. Think about those trolls protecting gold and other treasures, huh? Thank you, Anna Molly. These are the phantom forms which curse old castles with their presence, like the famous ghosts of Hampton Court and the ghost of Hamlet's father. Once they are freed from the pangs of conscience or unfinished work, these specters disappear because the consciousness dies out of the astral body, and this body becomes merely a shell. The shell is then often assumed by elementals. Here we go. The shell is often assumed by elementals which continue to haunt the places where the spirit itself once did. A great percentage of the visions seen by mediums are merely these etheric shells vitalized by an elemental of the astral or etheric worlds. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Ashley says, also the moon is said to reflect the light of the sun. So with the moon being hollow, perhaps the soul is what fills it, so to speak. Whoa. So check that out. The shell is often then assumed by elementals which continue to haunt the places where the spirit itself once did. A great percentage of the visions seen by mediums are merely these etheric shells vitalized by an elemental of the astral or etheric worlds. The earth-binding ties of narrow concepts, ignorance, one-pointedness of purpose, or similar attitudes can be found in numerous instances. For months after the close of the late World War, soldiers on both sides who had died fighting still rose from the battlefield and fought in the ethers. Man, that's not an existence I'd like to return to. Wholly unconscious of the fact that they were dead, they maimed and destroyed each other, cursed and swore, and lived again among the bursting shells and shrapnel, just as in former days. Still others wander among the forests of crosses and the great graveyards of Flanders and France, wondering after many years of death what has happened to them. I had a familiar experience like this, huh? You might remember my story. The sea is still peopled with phantom ships whose crews, long since dead, still sail for the port which they were never able to reach alive. I can only imagine the type of vibration that comes from a sinking ship in the middle of the ocean. Everybody panicking to the point that they congeal together and create an egregore out of the sunken ship. Sheesh. Among the ancient galleons on the etheric plane, the old Spanish buccaneer still counts his gold, tied by the bonds of materiality and selfishness to the world of which he is no longer a part of. The dope den. The dope den is still peopled by the spirits of those who died slaves to its curse and who come back again to inhale its fumes and live in its filth. Damn. The dope den. Nefrayu, peace. Nefrayu says, reminds me of the demons in movies pretending to be loved ones. Sheesh.